start with the phenomena. The name, you know, I call it the Hessdalen phenomena, but in the beginning everyone called it UFO. If we had used Professor John L. Hynek's definition, which say those aerial phenomena reports which continue to defy explanation in the conventional scientific terms, even after approximate study. Well, if that definition had been common among people, the word UFO could have been used, but most people only think of flying object from outer space when they hear the word UFO, and such make the topic difficult to deal with among scientists. So to make it more easy to deal with among scientists, we call it the Hessdalen phenomenon. When we started the project and discussed with scientists around, this was in the early 80s, they opened their doors more easily to us when we changed the word from UFO to the Hessdalen phenomenon. Take a short summary. Well, the Hessdalen Valley is 15 kilometers long and has about 140 inhabitants. And from December 1981 and up to the summer of 1984, did people see strange phenomena very often, up to 20 observations a week. Today there are in order of 20 observations a year. The phenomena are mostly seen as a big light. This unknown light can have many different appearances. The first project Hessdalen started in the summer of 1983. A day and night field investigation was run in Hessdalen in the winter of 1984 and 85, and instrumental readings were gathered. The new project Hessdalen was opened in 1994 with an international workshop in Hessdalen. 27 scientists from 8 countries participated. An automatic measurement station was put in operation in Hessdalen in 1998. Italian and French scientists have done research in Hessdalen Valley. Science camp are taking pupils to Hessdalen for studying the phenomena. Okay, Hessdalen, where is it located? Well, it's located in the southern part of Norway, about 35 kilometers north-northwest of the town Røros, in the municipality of Holtålen. The valley goes in a north-south direction and has mountains in the west and in the east. And here is a more enlarged map of the area. You have the mountains Finsahøyda in the west and the Rognefjell in the east. And you have a lake in the south called Eyjungen. Here's 2 pictures of the valley. In the upper picture you see Mount Finsahøyda to the west, and on the lower you see Mount Rogne and Mount Stordalshøyda in the east. It started in Mount Finsahøyda in the hillside here, where I put a red laser, and light was standing still there nearly every night, and people was wondering what could that be. There's no road, no cottage there. One evening, one of the inhabitants saw the light was coming out from this hillside, moving towards north, following the valley in that direction. We have a lot of pictures of the light. All pictures I will show has been taken with camera on tripod. And this is the yellow light with red flashes. And when the light is moving, when the exposure is open, you get a streak. Sometimes there are blue flashes, and sometimes it seems that the light is coming out of main light. This was the first light I was seeing. In the beginning of the 80s, the newspaper wrote about it, and people went up there to see it for themselves. A group of us went up there to see if we could see it for ourselves, and we was located on different mountains in the area and communicated with radar. And when we saw this light coming, lasting for 1.5 hours, sometimes shooting lights down on the ground, sometimes up in the air, that was really exciting. The day before this sighting, a local inhabitant up there saw a strange light in the hillside where his friend has a cottage. He thought it was a fire, and he went up there to see if he could save something. He has to move a little bit through the forest before he went up to the cottage, but the forest opened up 50 meters away from the cottage, and then he saw there wasn't a cottage on fire. It was a big light, as big as the cottage. It was triangular shaped with a sharp angle down. The triangle went down to the ground. When it touched the ground, it jumped up again, slowed it down, and when it touched the ground, it went up again. And it was as big as the cottage, about 10 meters. Okay, here's another picture. We call it the trailer or the truck. We have several pictures showing the same shape, and on one occasion the inhabitants saw this trailer in their garden and explained the size of it as a big truck. And all the pictures we have analyzed at Ground Source Watch in the States, and you can see different shapes, etc. On this picture you can see the light disappear. And that happened during the exposure time, and the photographer caught the disappearance on the film. The disappearance happened so fast, so the photographer didn't see it with his eyes. The thing is the sharp angle down and disappear like this. It's hard to imagine a mass moving very fast with such a sharp angle. The phenomena can change direction quickly. On this observation, this drawing is made of the observer. The phenomena started above the Mount Finnsøhøgda, which you can see on the right side, and moved towards him and in front of Aspåsjøen. 2 pictures was taken. This is the first one, and the weather was very foggy. The cloud was down on the mountain, and it was snowing. And it moved in this direction, and the photographer took one more picture before it disappeared behind this hillside. So it can show up in all weather conditions. Another picture showing a type of phenomena with several lights onto it, a black object with lights onto it is a drawing. And one picture was taken with a red light in front and 2 yellow lights in the back. Another observation done in the daytime, silver shiny object glided slowly out of an invisible portal in the sky. The distance was impossible to calculate, but it was close enough to see the details of the object. If you can imagine, if you have an invisible portal in the sky and it went past to it, and you can then see it. For instance, this portal. Invisible. This was invisible. And it was also a weak flickering light walked along the side of the object, and the object stopped, and the observer felt there was a communication. Here are some drawings of the different observations done by the people up there. There are also a lot of other shapes and behavior, and it can stand still, it can move very fast, so there's a lot of different types of sightings. These sightings happened in September 1980, 1 year before the big flash started. The hunter Holm was surprised by 3 objects in Hessdalen when he was hunting on the 19th of September 1980. Holm suddenly got a strange feeling. It was like the air was removed around him. He felt something from behind, and suddenly he saw 3 sharp shadows coming from behind. While he was, there was sunshine, he was hunting, had his rifle, and then he saw these shadows and saw these 3 disc-shaped objects. Suddenly all 3 turned up to the side with the bottom in front and moved away with a very high speed. Olen sold his rifle and has never been hunting after this. Well, here's his description of the bottom. Well, we started Project Hessdalen the 3rd of June 1983, and plan for a field investigation was made during the autumn, and 40 people participated in the field work, lasting from 21st of January to the 26th of February 1984. You can say it was late. It has been going on for nearly 2 years before we started the project, but everyone expected that someone else should do something. But if you ask, well, you expect someone else to do it, that university or that research establishment, and you're pointing at the finger at the different institutes. No, there are 3 fingers pointing back to you. Even if we had very little funding, we started the project. Here is some of the instruments we used during the field work. I'm not going to go through all the details here. It can be found on the internet. Well, I will take some of the result. The radar recordings were made even when nothing was seen by the observer. It was invisible though. High speed was 30,000 kilometers an hour. That was a light. A spectrum analyzer, sometimes there were electromagnetic noise in a broad frequency band. Magnetograph, some observations were made during large magnetic activity, about 40%. Laser, we pointed the laser beam to it, and it was a flashing light, and it doubled the flashing frequency when the laser beam was directed to it. We had 53 visual observations during the field work of the Hessdalen phenomena. Sometimes we had a rocking motion as if you are in a boat in the ocean. Well, maybe one of the most spectacular results was our test with the laser and one of the sightings afterwards. On Sunday, the 12th of February, a flashing light doubled the flashing frequency when a red laser beam was directed onto it, and the flashing frequency went back to normal when the laser beam was removed. And we did that test 9 times, and in 8 of those 9 times, it doubled the frequency. And on Monday, the 20th February, a red light was seen moving on the ground close to the feet of the observers. Quite similar to the laser beam we used, but it was not our laser, it was something else. Okay, we got a lot of results in '84, and we started a new field work in '85. And in '85 we got a visit from Professor Judd Allen Hynek from the States, and he said he should start a group. The group should help us, but sadly when he went back he became ill and he died some times afterwards. After 1985, we got only one. In 1985, we got only 1 big sightings, compared with 53 in '84. It seems that it had gone. But in 1993, I had a presentation up there, and after the presentation, people say, "But it's still going on, but we don't tell anyone because of the behavior of the press, and they are ridiculed." So we stopped telling about it. So I decided to start a project again, and I started with a conference. I called it the first international workshop on atmospheric light phenomena in Hessdalen, and we got 27 scientists from 8 different countries participate. And one of the participants, Nobel-nominated Professor Boris Minov, he said, "The phenomenon contains some qualitative elements which at the present time has no analog in science. Thus the solution of this problem must lead to new concepts in science." David Freiberg from Stanford said, "The Hessdalen project has established beyond doubt that the Hessdalen lights are real physical phenomena. These phenomena lies outside of already known physics. The most important result of this workshop was that the press changed after this workshop. No more smiling when reporting about observation in Hessdalen. We put up an automatic station in 1998, and it's located in a field in the northern part of Hessdalen. It faces west, and it has equipment inside with save and react on phenomena. And here you can see two helical lights coming up from the ground and going down to the ground. And here's another sightings where you see the light in the first picture, and you will see a video also, and then you have a new alarm picture here. I will show you the video. It seems it's changing shapes a little when it's moving. And if you study this closely, you can also see a small light just beneath it coming up in the main light. It can be difficult to see from there, so you can, but on the original you can see. We have want to take this to the school system, and we have organized what we call science camp. Young students and their teachers are doing research during 1 week in Hessdalen. They have instruments and camera, and they stay in tents during the night in September. It's cold. And the phenomena can show up at any time. It's exciting, and the students love it, and they learn science and experience the unknown. And we have had observation during every science camp since 2002. This is also a way to get the phenomena accepted among ordinary people. Well, here's one picture taken during science camp in 2004, and used three flashes and a blue light here. Here you see a blow-up of the blue light and also one of the flashes. A similar flashing, if you study the blue light, you can see some up and down here, and we had a similar light in 1984. It started to oscillate and the amplitude increased. This is also one picture taken during the science camp in 2007. You have an optical spectrum we use always grating, so you get the optical spectrum of the light, and it seems to be a continuous light, continuous spectrum. I think I will show you some film. You can understand it's very popular with sightings in Hessdalen among students. That was the same as the same light here, and you have also, we had a base camp on different mountains, and on this base camp we didn't see the light because it was behind the mountain. We located the light phenomena quite exactly because we have triangulation from 3 different locations, and based on where we know the location, we can also calculate the size of it, 2.2 kilometers. And also we had a radar in operation here, and that started to record 8:30, 1.5 hours before the sightings. And after the outbreak, we didn't see any light after that, but the radar continued to see it more than 1 hour more. So they were still there, but we couldn't see it. We have used some calibration on the picture to find out what it could be. Well, here's some technical, I will go fast through that. But the result is that we could expect a lot of ultraviolet light. And ultraviolet light is high energy light, and it's also outside of the visible area, which we can see. So our most important wish is to have the ultraviolet camera to put up there. Another happening where a light was coming down to the snow, not in Hessdalen, but in Norway. The light was seen from this cottage. It was coming in here in front of this mountain. It stopped and went down to the snow and made 3 tracks in the snow, approximately 60 centimeters wide and 2.5 meters between. And when it hit the ground, the intensity of the light was very decreased to a very low level. It stood there some seconds and moved up again. Then the intensity increased. It disappeared the same way as it had come. We did take some samples from the snow and measured the amount of bacteria in the track. It's very low. It seems to kill bacteria. There's also similar lights other places in the world. We have in Australia. We have similar blue flashes which last only a fraction of a second. Difficult to know if there is something. But we always take a picture when we believe we see something because it's so short in duration, so the eyes doesn't always see it or the brain doesn't see it, but the camera sees it. Big magnetic activity the day with most observations. Well, this picture is the last picture from the Hessdalen area last summer. 2 pictures was taken showing some red cloudy object in the sky. And another strange thing in Hessdalen, a big piece of wet soil was moved without any damage, and this happened close to Hessdalen in the early 80s. This was a big piece which wasn't destroyed, and it's impossible for man to move such a big piece of wet soil without damage. But we don't know if this has anything to do with the Hessdalen phenomenon, but we know it happened in the same area. Well, to the end I will take some of the data. It seems to be some kind of interaction, sometimes laser radio message also. It is seen on radar even when it cannot be seen by our eyes. It's easier to see it when there are high magnetic activity. It can show up from nowhere and just disappear. It seems to be high energy light, UV light, ultraviolet light. And there are many different shapes. And maybe we need to think outside the box to find a solution.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And above all, I want to outline the fact that as a scientist, your activity was perfect.